Okay, welcome everyone. We are back with the knowledge enhancement series. Today we are here to discuss one of the very important topic being discussed in the global arena and as well as in India about the growth story of India. We have recently witnessed a tremendous GDP growth rate. So whether it's a reality or a hype, that we will be capturing on a broader aspect. So when we talk about India today, one word dominates every conversation: growth. India has recently become the fourth largest economy, beating Japan, and that sounds like a historic breakthrough. Headlines celebrate it as a proof that India is finally arrived as a global economic power, but behind the celebration lies a deeper question. Is this growth a sign of a long-term structural transformation, or it is partly a headline effect, impressive on paper but fragile under math? The real issue is not whether India can touch 7 or 8% growth. In some years, we already know it can. The real question is whether India can sustain that pace consistently over the next decade as China did. Anyone can sprint for short distance. Sustaining speed over time is the real test. Now, let us deep dive into this. Why this topic matters? Because the discussion affects for more than just a GDP charts. Economic growth shapes jobs, income, government spending, living standard for nearly 1.5 billion people, the largest in the planet. When growth is strong and steady, government can invest more in health, education, infrastructure. When growth slows, those ambitions shrinks quickly. It really matters. Yes, overtaking Japan is a symbolically important, but symbolism does not automatically translate into better livelihood. The real concern is whether growth is broad-based and sustainable or whether it makes deeper weakness. Believing in growth hype without questioning the foundation can lead to a poor policy choices and long-term disappointment. That's why the longevity matters a lot. Baseline reality, yes, the number says it all. At first glance, the recent data looks undeniably strong. India recorded 7.8% growth in first quarter FY26 and about 8.2% in the second quarter, averaging roughly to 8% in the first half of the year. This is phenomenal. This reflects a strong post-pandemic rebound and places India among the fastest growing major economies across this planet. But history gives us context. India's long-term average growth since independence is close to 6%. Short bursts of a high growth are not new, and they have often been followed by slowdown. So high growth is possible, but sustaining it year after year is the real challenge. What drives India's growth? Let us decode this fact. The source of a growth matters as much as the speed of a growth. Today, India's growth is driven mainly by the service and the private consumption because of the population. Service account more than half of the GDP. Unfortunately, manufacturing contribute less than 1/5, which is 20%. And agriculture grows at a very modest pace. So service-led growth can lift GDP quickly, especially in urban area, but deep economic transformation usually require strong manufacturing growth and productivity gain. If consumption alone drive growth, it is likely increase spending every year without upgrading skills or technology. Eventually, limits appear. So we really need to think on that perspective. Per capita reality, check. Many times it can be compared as one of the more important parameters. Big economies do not automatically mean prosperous citizens. India's GDP per capita remains under $3,000, far below most middle income and advanced economies. Rapid population growth means that even a strong overall GDP growth rate gets spread thin across a very large population. This is why aggregate growth can look impressive while individual living standard improve slowly. What truly matters for people is per capita income growth and job creation, not just the size of the economy. Now, the optimistic view of it, there are genuine reasons for optimism about India's growth future. India has a young workforce at a time when many major economies are aging. Domestic consumption provides a strong internal engine even when global demand weakens. Infrastructure spending has increased. Reforms like GST and labor code aims to improve efficiency over the time, and these are all reflecting the growth strong foundation. These factor explains why India consistently rank among the fastest growing larger economies. The potential for sustained momentum exists, especially if reform translate into higher productivity and investment. The skeptical view, we need to think on the other aspect of it. They questions its durability. Skeptics do not deny growth, they questions its durability. Global institutions like IMF, the World Bank projected India's medium-term growth close to 6 to 6.5%, not steady to 7 to 8%. There are also concerns about data quality, which add uncertainty to the headline numbers. Investment remains lower than those seen in China's high growth phase. Export growth has been uneven amid global trade tensions. Without a strong investment and export engine, sustaining very high growth becomes difficult. Ground realities, let's check into that. This is where growth numbers meet everyday economies. India's growth is largely consumption-led, with private consumption making up the more than half of the GDP. Investment-led growth, which built long-term capacity, remains insufficient. India has a large workforce, but productivity lags behind global peers. Service growth boosts output, but does not always generate mass employment or rising wages. Inequality and regional disparities continue beneath the surface, limiting how long high growth can be sustained. And macro stability versus the constant, let us look into that aspect also. The macro picture shows both improvement and limits. Inflation easing in late 2025 supports the real income and stabilized demand, which is positive. However, fiscal deficit remain high and public debt constant. How aggressively the government can respond to the future shocks. Stability has improved, but policy space is limited. Long-term growth must increase, come from the productivity, investment and competitiveness rather than fiscal expansion. And finally, to conclude with this topic, the reality meets the optimism. So is India growth story real or hype? The honest answer is that it is real but conditional. Averaging close to 7% growth over the next decade is achievable if investment rises, exports strengthen, productivity improve. Sustaining 8% or more consistently is far harder without deep structural reform. So, headline growth does not automatically mean transformation. Data quality matters, and ultimately what matters most for the citizen is per capita income growth and job creation, not just GDP rankings. So, to conclude, India's growth story carries enormous potential, but its sustainability depends on policy depth, investment strength, and structural reform, not hype. Thank you so much. I hope you understood this topic and enjoyed this video. Subscribe our channel and compulsory share with your other colleagues. Thank you so much.